Hey everybody, it's Barry Chamish with a minor, I would call it cardiac arrest as my Skype disappeared and Yoav Netzer reappeared and oh gosh, me and technology. Just to remind you, next week is Eric, well, you know Phelps. Everybody knows Phelps, but he's been away from us for close to a year now, and he'll be back next week. Right now, I believe we have Yoav on the line, do we?
Hello.
Look at that. We have you on the line. All right. You'll excuse me. I went through your notes. Yesterday was nasty, nasty weather where I lived. You're talking 8 inches of rain. It was really screwy. But here I am. The rain has ended, and we are now going to now get ready for this. All right. I didn't understand a word of what you wrote me. So let's start with something simple. What is the Stockholm Syndrome?
When somebody is taken by criminals, hijacked, and taken hostage,
That's
and
the syndrome?
ends up identifying with the kidnapper.
Okay, that's what it is. Okay. All right. They end up liking them a lot and thinking like them.
Identifying with the cause, yeah, because they are dominant and decisive, and it's psychologically easy to identify with the decisive party rather than to oppose it. So many
In other words, they become terrorists if kidnapped by terrorists. They identify with them to the point of becoming them.
Yeah, it's a way of recruiting people, in a way.
Is that a good defense once you're captured and put on trial that you were a victim of Stockholm Syndrome?
Well, it depends if you count for it while somebody is still under custody or later on. Sometimes it remains for years after.
Well, if they weren't kidnapped, they wouldn't have had the syndrome. It's a very. If I were a defense attorney, I'd see it as an easy way out to freedom. Even if you've blown up a building, killed 100 people, you were a victim of Stockholm Syndrome.
Well, I suppose you can always claim that there was a psychological disorder and you're not clear to stand trial, right?
Yeah.
Post-traumatic syndrome and the rest of it.
Well,
but
you're
I
making.
suppose,
Yeah.
but I suppose this wasn't the point I was relating to, the legality or not legality.
Well, you're talking about people becoming victims of a mentality of vassalism. They become vassals. What are you talking about?
Well, I mean, if you look at the European history and the Asian history, most of the people used to be kind of nearly slaves to the ruling caste, and that was called vassals. And the U.S. exceptionalism was originally in not having a vassal feudal relationship, although this wasn't accurately the case either, because, for example, the founding fathers of the U.S.
For example, slavery.
Yeah. Slavery in the U.S. case is different because the slave was in a even worse condition than the vassal. The slave had fewer rights, if any. But even if you look at the founding fathers of the U.S., their regular workers were basically vassals, or even less than that. And many people don't know that large part of the slaves 300 years ago were Irish people, not Africans, and so it wasn't only the blacks, and there were Pacific blacks, lots of them. So, but anyhow, we can say that for most Americans, 2 centuries ago, after the independence was declared, there was no more per se slavery and no vassalism. People tend to look for themselves, to have their own land and to be armed and have their own transportation and look after themselves.
All right. In the U.S., I'm going to follow your logic. There is a reason you're making these points, and what you claim is that, here's your claim, socialism can be forced on a formerly healthy society, and I don't know what this Obamurism is. I've never heard of it. What are we talking about here? What is Obamurism?
Obamunism.
No, it's Obomur-ism.
I think I wrote Obamunism. Obamunism is...
Okay, you didn't, but okay. So you're somehow relating this to our current president?
Well, it's a term which is very prevalent in the media, right? Obamunism. So basically, what changes the U.S. has been undergoing for nearly 8 years by now, it's basically trying to condition the Americans to being vassals of the state, to looking up to the government for help, and thus agreeing to higher taxation and losing rights and losing the Constitution bit by bit, step by step. And that is throwing the U.S. back to where Europe is, especially Western Europe is, yeah?
I'm not sure what you mean. You're saying Eastern Europe is healthy, but the socialists are now Western Europe, who somehow this Obama-ism, whatever it is having an effect on them. No, I'm lost here. Sort this out, please. Why Western Europe?
Because Western Europe has never been free from this arrangement of feudals and vassals. Yeah. In Western Europe, there's always been a ruling caste and an oppressed majority. And the oppression is mental as well as economical. Yeah, it's a caste-based society.
In England, the Jews, I'm looking at it from the point of view of my people, there may have been a caste system, but England offered us a way to make a living.
Well, the way to make a living like a dog, yeah? This is what socialism is about.
I don't know about a dog. Look, if you take the prime minister under Victoria for years was Rothschild, agreed he had to convert and fit in and all this, but I'm not sure dog is exactly his position.
Yeah, but he is a feudal, he's not a vassal, right? So it doesn't matter where you come from, it matters which caste you belong to. The caste is not determined by affiliation of what you believe in or you don't believe in. It depends on how much money you've got. And this was always the case. And when there was the storm, the destruction, I think it was in 2000 and what was it, 5?
I'm not sure what you mean.
In the U.S., what is this, in the southeast, when there was a big storm and...
Well, that would be Katrina. No, Katrina was New Orleans.
Yes.
Irene, I think, was New York. But yeah, a 250,000 people were underwater. What's that got to do with this?
And then the British media covered the case in New Orleans, and they said that it was the poorest place in the U.S., but it was still offering, in average, a better standard of living than in the U.K. Okay?
That was a widespread. You know, they were in a dome. The whole population was in a dome. I don't know where you got this story, but I don't think anyone viewed it as a successful place.
Before the storm, yeah, before the storm, the standard of living in New Orleans was significantly better than in the UK. And because after the Second World War, the UK government forced socialism on the people, which means forced on them poverty, forced on them hyper-taxation, forced on them food rationing, and this way conditioned them to feel that there were no resources, to feel hopeless, killed all the morality that was inside the society, because you could survive only by means of tricking all the time. The British majority was, the decisive majority was engineered, has been engineered out of civilization. Yeah, there are a few relics left, but it was destroyed. And since 1968, you see it also throughout.
Well, what happened to, the Beatles, the Stones? I mean, they were very creative people, and they were worldwide successes.
So
it's not like the British were out of it totally. They pulled, some pretty significant punches here.
So what? So you've got a few clowns making a show for propaganda and getting some money. That's got nothing to do with the general situation, right?
I don't know about that. Again, you're talking Jews, and that, of course, would be Brian Epstein, who manipulated Liverpool to be a cultural center. And I'm not seeing things exactly. You're talking about utter, complete lack of success in Britain because of socialism. Admittedly, the taxes were higher, and you did get a better medical system than the States, way better. But I'm not sure what your argument is here.
The British state healthcare, NHS, the British say it stands for no health system. I mean, no socialist service ever worked well. I mean, socialism is destruction from within. Yes? This is the reason it exists. It is far worse than communism, because communism attempts to keep the regime in place, to create a strong nation. Even if it is a poor nation, it would be a nation which has its own military capacity, which has its own science.
So you're saying communism is way better than socialism, which saps the blood of the people. Okay, go ahead. But believe me, there would be people who would butt in and say you're wrong here. Being in a communist society was way worse than being in a socialist one.
Socialist society exterminates the nation by definition. You can look at the numbers. Yeah, wherever you've got socialism, in earnest, in an industrial society, yeah, in a white society, then what you've got is genocide.
Oh gosh, that's amazing.
There was never, apart from the revolutionary stage of the Soviet Union, which was much longer than
Which
people
shipped
think.
40 million people to Siberia. If you were lucky, you came home. If you were very lucky. If not, you died there. I'm not sure what you're saying.
There were two stages to the Soviet Union, roughly. The first stage, which was nothing but murder. Yeah, it wasn't even communism. It was murder. Yeah, that was the Comintern. And since May 43, and in particular since the war ended in May 45, the population kept on growing. From 1951 to 1991, the Soviet population grew up 50%. Yes, and the level of science in the Warsaw Pact countries in the 1980s was already much better than in Western Europe. So, because you see, the murder was, and the revolutionary stage was over, and it became what's called national Bolshevism, which is of course not recommended, but it increased the population.
When they opened up the borders of Israel, this would be in the mid-70s to about the early 80s. Over 1 million Soviet Jews, and pretending to be whatever, they got the hell out of there. It was a way out. They weren't happy with this level of science, and they didn't see opportunities there. They ran.
I don't think it was 1 million, and also it was people that the regime wanted out because they were Jewish. And that's the same thing that happened in Romania in the 1950s. Yeah, they're telling you that they pushed out. They couldn't push anything. They were thrown out. Yeah, of course they were happy to be out. The Soviet regime, the communist regime, is never recommended. And at the time, the West, America at least, was not socialist. And even Western Europe 40 years ago, yeah, you didn't still see the demographic damage.
Of
you
what?
Still,
of what?
Of socialism.
Okay.
Because the damage which started in 1968, which is not less than genocide by design, all those cultural changes and the resulting economical changes, that, for example, today there is no continuation generation to German engineering. There is...
Well, that's because they're not having children. You've got to...
That's exactly it. There's a reason why women don't make children, because socialism ruined the family. You see, in the Soviet Union, even in the war...
the same low birth rate in the Soviet Union. It's all of Europe.
No. In the Soviet Union, the birth rates were never too low. Actually, like I said, between 51 and 91, the population grew from within 50% over 40 years. Okay? Of course, mostly
in... disappeared, and with it half their population. I mean, there a lot of things came after 90 about, and there was a much smaller... There was Russia afterwards. There was a Soviet Union for a while, and now all you have left is Russia.
Well, the social decline in the East is not that large. It's definitely negligible in comparison with what happens in the West. Also in the U.S., the average age of white people is 41. Yeah, it's not very different from the 43 in Germany. So, and the decline in the East is because of emigration. It's not that the white people died out. They simply replaced people in the West. If it wasn't for... If it wasn't Polish and Romanian and Russian people in the millions moving west to Germany and Britain and Italy and France and the U.S., then the average age of whites in the complete West would be even higher. Yeah, so
I'm not sure what you're getting at. So ultimately, and now I'm doing my best. You're using the word whites. Actually, Syrians are whites. They're Muslims, and Germany's got 1.5 million more of them than they did 10 years ago. That's a fact. And
I'm talking about the original population. Okay, that's number one.
Aryans.
What I'm talking now is about the original population, the original families. Okay, doesn't matter what they look like. I'm talking now about the performance analysis of socialism. You take a society of talented industrial people, yes? Doesn't matter if it's Russian, Polish, German, French, British, or American, that's about it, or Swedish, yes?
Yeah.
And you put them under socialism. What happens is that the lineages shrink, yeah? The families are gone. The women stop being maternal, the men stop being masculine, and the society disintegrates and disappears. This never happened in Eastern Europe. In Eastern Europe, the only thing that shrunk population was that in the 20s and the 30s, there was a different kind of communism before Stalin, which was murderous. But it never destroyed the nature of the people. The people were always...
40 or 50 million were slaughtered by Nazis. I'm not sure where we're going here. All right, so the Nazis were good guys because they weren't socialists?
Firstly, they weren't socialists, unlike what their name suggests. They weren't exactly nationalists either. They were mafia, okay? Now, the thing is that what happened inside the Soviet Union was far more murderous than what the Nazis were.
Okay. Let's say even. You know, if you want, either way.
Not even. The communism before Stalin was about 10 times to 100 times more murderous than the Nazis. But that's not the point now. The point is that socialism destroys the values of society. Socialism is about turning people to childish behavior, where they look up to the state like they were babies and the government was their mother. But the government is never your mother. The government is the bad witch. Remember the stories about the witches, right?
I'm not sure. Remember what stories about what witches?
What you call Hansel and Gretel in America. All those
Hansel
children.
And Gretel. Okay. Hansel and Gretel was actually German, but was there a witch? There were children, that's for sure. Look, we're about to take a break, and I'm doing my best, honest, to keep you on a straight line. I believe your thesis is, if I'm not mistaken, that Europe is, like America today, after Obamaism, socialist. Right? Is that what you're saying?
It's been force-fed into socialism on purpose in order to destroy it.
And America is the same thing. You're saying after 8 years of Obama, America is now heavily... Oh, we have to take a break. Listen, we'll plug each other when we get back. And listeners, honest, I'm doing my best that this makes a lot of sense to you. It's tough on me, okay? This is Yoav Netzer. We've had him before, and, well, he is provocative. That's for darn sure. We'll be back in 3 minutes. See you in 3, folks.
Since the beginning of time, kings have sought it, nations have fought for it. It has been traded It has been borrowed. It has been purchased. It has been stolen. There's a reason for it. To secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity, invest with the security of gold and silver. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188 or visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net. Listen to Financial Survival with your host Melody Cedarstrom right here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com at 4 p.m. Eastern or 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net or call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free 1-800-375-4188.
The book of Revelation says, the spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus Christ. This is at the very heart of FirstAmendmentRadio.com. In that spirit, we have created the Prophecy Reality News app for all of your mobile devices, streaming First Amendment Radio 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Available for your Apple, Android device, and smartphone, absolutely free. Get the Prophecy Reality News app installed today so you can listen to First Amendment Radio wherever you are. The Prophecy Reality News app. Get it now. Visit crosstheborder.org, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. That's crosstheborder.org.
I know you all want answers, and believe me, so do I, and I'll do my best to get them.
Despite Nicolas Cage's promise to do his best to get left behind rapture answers for us, don't hold your breath. Not everyone believes Left Behind is true prophecy. Some may even regard as conspiratorial the mainstream re-release of the Left Behind movie with actor Nicolas Cage portraying the main character as an attempt to further reinforce in the minds of all this perception of false prophecy in order to condition the masses for the play about to begin. If you want true Bible prophecy answers, get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. The author exposes the Latin rapture origin, the 7-year tribulation deception, true Bible revelation of Daniel's 70 weeks, the abomination of desolation, the restrainer, America in the Revelation, the image of the beast and the mark of the beast, and the truth about God's chosen people, and so much more about Bible prophecy. This book will shatter the left behind paradigm of future events. Get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. Visit crosstheborder.org, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. That's crosstheborder.org.
Oh gosh. I'm continuing with Yoav, but I'm going to plug me first. Folks, all my books are at lulu.com. That's www.lulu.com. There's a search box at Lulu. Write in my last name, Chamish, Chamish, and you'll get to all 9 of my books. Also, there's one in French, one in Spanish, and I've got a few in Hebrew that are translated, and that's at Lulu. My website, I'm going to, one way or another, have to make it more reliable, but folks, I'm using a new computer, and I'm doing, I guess, okay. Here I am. So, nonetheless, it was a major pain in the neck in my life, and a financial pain in the neck, but it's still www.barrychamish.com. I'll see what I can do about sorting it out. Yoav, plug yourself.
Well, I'm not writing no books, so let's go back to the topic.
No, you people have to get a hold of you. How?
Well, I put a few articles, actually many articles over the past 5 years on a friend's website. I gave it a funny name, Essential Intelligence Network. It's just a hobby website.
Look, hobby schmobby. Give it the full name, including .what. Essential. Go ahead one more time so people can go read you.
Essential-intelligence-network.com.
Perfect. Folks, we are archived for a week. If you didn't catch it first time, we're at libertyarchives.com for a week, and you can catch it. Now I'm going to go through what you sent me, and my goodness, look, after claiming that socialism has taken over America, you offer a new financial system. You sent me somebody to read. It's not simple, but what you're saying is that the fractional reserve system is going to take over coins and printing money. They're all rigged, but fractional reserve, well, that's going to work. Now, what the hell is a fractional reserve? And by the way, what is an IT infrastructure for transparency, not the perpetrated obfuscation, which I think you mean is state counterfeiting? What did you mean by all this?
Well, the official banking system in the West is called fractional reserve system, which means allegedly the bank has got some money to start with, on which basis it gives you a loan. It doesn't give you all the money it's got, it multiplies the amount it's got. So if it's got $1, it can lend you $10 by means of producing $9 out of nowhere, and when you pay the money back, it writes down those $9. The problem is that it doesn't write down the $9 and keep them to themselves, the $9 it created to start with. This is the problem. This is the main financial killing.
Look, I know America is stuck with a $14 trillion national debt. And if you look at it objectively, that's not the way the world should operate. At best, you should be breaking even. This, I assume we agree on, right?
Yeah, but these are separate matters. I mean, even if fractional reserve system worked the way it should work, you could take from the bank any amount of money, and when you pay it back, it would disappear again. And the thing is that
there was a time there wasn't a debt. It didn't disappear when it worked.
No, the thing with fractional reserve system is, if it is implemented the way it should be, that the currency is created and then written down, is that when you are up to undertake something like buying a house or building a house or setting up a business or buying a car, you take the responsibility to perform the physical, real economical activity for which you need the currency. By the time it's ended, the currency also ends up because you pay back. So the more people undertake, the more currency there is in circulation, and the less people undertake, there would be less currency in circulation.
And if you don't pay it back, actually I have a personal experience. My lovely lady bought a car today. Beautiful car, but it's a Volkswagen. I have a German problem I won't go into, but I think she made a great deal. But she has to repay every month, and if she doesn't, it'll be repossessed. And I believe that's how it works. You agree to terms. If you don't live up to them, they come and they take the property away. Am I wrong about something?
Yeah, that is correct. But look, firstly, it should be the banker's responsibility to give the loan only to people who've got very high chance to pay back. and then it is wrong that the bank does the repossession, because what happens is that the bank then sells the property on a very large discount to its cronies, to its friends, to its family members, etc. What should happen is that the foreclosure will be done by the state with a realistic price, much higher price, and that the bank would then be responsible to pay the difference to the state.
Well, so you're taking the loan out somewhere. I believe if you took it out directly from, the car lot, they would foreclose. They'd hire somebody, and they would come with a warrant. Am I getting something wrong here? And by the way, this is my personal experience has been very good. She got very good interest. It seems like a very square deal to me. Now, where am I blowing this?
The guy who sells you the car is not the guy who gives you the loan, really. He's not a bank. It's the bank which generates the money, which buys the car for cash money from the manufacturer, right? So somebody has to firstly go to a bank, take the money, pay the manufacturer, get the car, and then sell it over to you. So basically it is the bank which forecloses. And it shouldn't be the case. It should be the state which forecloses. And then if the money achieved by means of foreclosure is insufficient to pay back the entire sum, then the bank needs to take the responsibility and pay that sum, take a loss.
All right, I'm going to ask again. State, when you say the state should hold responsibility, isn't that socialism?
No, it's not the state that is going to take the cost. The state is going to make the sale because it's the application of law. It's like the state putting thieves in jail. Yeah, if a contract is broken, foreclosure basically means that the contract is broken, that somebody has defaulted on a loan. Yes. Then anyhow it goes to a court of law, right? The bank has to go to court and say, I would like to foreclose on a property which is under the ownership of somebody, and the court has to approve it. So the court should be the agent or somebody appointed by the court, which shouldn't be the bank, but it should be an agency of the state, which should do the foreclosure for
again,
a certain
you're going
commission.
Back to the state. You're saying state again. Now,
because there is a contract. Once you break a contract, the state must intervene, because the state is the enforcement agent of the law. Nobody else is. Now the problem is when the bank conducts the foreclosure, then somebody private, who's called the bank, forecloses on somebody's property and basically confiscates it. It shouldn't happen that way.
You tell me. What is the difference between what we got, which I believe is just, currency that buys a property and it's repaid, and that's what I think we have right now. What are you proposing?
No, what happens in foreclosure is completely different. What happens is, firstly, the bank generated the currency out of thin air. It gives it to you. You buy a product. Then it takes from you the product, sells it on a discount to his friends,
I'm not sure. I think if it's foreclosed, it's just taken away and it goes back to the used car lot. I don't think his friend gets the car.
That doesn't matter. But the money the currency which was created in the first step is not being destroyed. So somebody is stealing it, you see? If the bank gave that lady $20,000, it means that the bank generated $18,000 out of that sum, and in earnest most probably every single cent of those $20,000 out of thin air. It simply assumed its existence.
Well, no. We're talking about a good loan risk. You're talking a responsible person. She's been responsible all her life. They look at things like that. They just
So
don't.
what? So what? It doesn't matter. The money that the bank gave her came to exist only by means of the fact that she signed a commitment to pay it back. She signed a contract, a loan-taking contract. When you take a loan, you actually sign a contract by which you commit yourself to pay back.
Yes.
On that, the bank takes this contract, puts it in its safe, and against it, it generates currency out of thin air. Now, this currency has to disappear by the time the entire deal ends. By the time you have repaid it, the bank has to write it down, every single cent of it.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Now, if you foreclose, not a single cent is being written down.
Well,
There's a problem.
Why you try and keep up payments.
Yeah, but what happens when somebody defaults? Somebody still needs to write down this money.
They're either a thief or they ran into trouble. There are reasons. But again, I'm going to ask you the same question. What are you proposing that doesn't exist? Other than the state covering everything.
No. You keep on inverting anything. The state doesn't cover anything. The state operates as an agent of the court for a fee. The bank has to pay the difference. So if your lady took a loan of $20,000 and the foreclosure yielded $8,000, and the car now was worth not $20,000 anymore, it was worth $16,000, then the bank needs to pay the remaining $8,000 to the state agency which would exist, and the state agency.
How does this balance and get us off this 14?
I tell you.
Yes.
It's that agency, special agency, would simply write down the money it receives, and also the proceedings from the sales of the car would be paid to that agency, which would then altogether write down the $16,000. You see, the thing is this:
not really.
Instead of paying back to the bank, you would pay back to the special state agency, which would write down the money that it receives. So the bank would generate the currency like today, and you pay back to that agency which write it down. And this would balance the books, 0-0. Okay?
Really, and the wider debt would all disappear because we now have a fair accounting system. Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying that the bank wouldn't be stealing the money that it steals today. And it still means that if the government takes a loan, it has to pay it back. Yeah. The reason there's a lot of debt today is because the Obama administration, which is responsible for at least half that debt, but also the Bush beforehand and many others beforehand.
Clinton
they took the money.
That, it's been going on dead. It's been on a steady downward.
No, it's not steady. It's going exponential. Over the past 10 years, it's been growing exponential. And it's been going exponential because the money was given for free to the banks with 0 interest rate. Okay? This has nothing to do with the fractional reserve system. This is plain theft or robbery. Okay?
Not really.
Yes, it is, because QE is robbery. It's nothing but robbery.
What is QE? What is QE?
Quantitative easing. It means that the government,
like we all knew that,
every year takes a loan of $1 trillion and gives it free to the bankers. This is what they've been doing.
Hold on a sec. Now, Lehman Brothers and Bear Stearns, I mean, these were big banks that went under. Um, they didn't have a free ride. They went into debt. Now, they should have been sitting in jail, masses of them, without a doubt. For grand larceny, they got away with that, but they still shut down.
They didn't really shut down. They were sold over cheap to other banks who inherited the loans, and the remaining banks like Goldman Sachs and others, they have been receiving, and not only them, also the siblings in Europe have been receiving trillions of dollars from the governments. It's all over the media. It's all over the news. Nobody's denying it.
I'm going to quote you. It doesn't matter. You're getting quoted. You tell me what this means, because I couldn't understand it. Get ready. The growth in total global debt over 7 years is like having 5% inflation. This inflation is necessary to erode the value of cash positions. Did I understand that? You bet I didn't.
Well, look, if I sell you something, a product or a service, and you pay me cash, yeah, then what you got from me has an initial value, and over time it loses value. If it was a product, it becomes older, it wears out. If it's food, you ate it. If it's information, it usually becomes less relevant over time. So if I keep the money, the cash that you give me, that's called remaining in a cash position, namely not having bought something for that money, and the money didn't lose value, then what you received keeps on losing value. People who buy things keep on losing value, while the sellers keep on accumulating value because the money didn't lose value. This is what happens when you have no inflation, but this doesn't really happen in the real world. In the real world, you always have inflation because the things that are being sold keep on losing value after they are sold, and this is why the money which stands versus the real economy, which is the things that have been sold over the years, also loses value. So it's now a question of, firstly, how fast the money, or say the currency, loses its value, how many percents per year, and then how much from that rate is acknowledged officially. Now officially they say there's only 2% inflation a year, when in point of fact it's more like 6 or 8% a year.
Well, somebody's keeping the books. I mean, it's not like, are you saying the money is actually being outright stolen?
It's because they acknowledge only, say,
the books of the nation?
Of course, the books are always being cooked, and more so in the past decade. And, I mean, there are various ways of cooking the books. For example, the banks give loans to people who cannot repay. Remember, subprime and ninja loans, no income, no job loans.
Yeah, I remember that. Eventually,
and then
banks, look, 2 banks shut their doors. People lost their jobs. And again, people should have been sent to prison. All right, that goes without saying.
In Iceland, they were sent to prison.
Well, in New York,
Iceland is the only country where the bankers were sent to prison, and the country is flourishing again in real terms.
All right, in New York, you just were unemployed. All right, but something is very wrong. But again, somebody is looking at the books, and when they're trying to make all this balance, and when it can't balance, you have yourself a first-class bubble, and you can't get out of the bubble, and the things topple. Am I seeing things wrong?
Yeah, I mean, when you cook the books, it must lead to collapse. There's no way around it, yes.
Again, that's a vast statement. There have been all kinds of theft. They'll bet you people have gotten around it, all right? It's not an inevitability. You cook the books, everyone's going to find out it's going to collapse.
It's going, I mean, if you cook the books a little, then it's not going to collapse the system. At most, somebody stole something or even somebody was punished. But if the economy is to a large extent the result of cooking the books, then the majority of the people is going to find itself, like you say, unemployed, and then the economy collapses. That's the meaning of collapse, that people cannot make a living anymore.
Well, again, we're talking bubbles, and a bubble starts when the money is going into absolutely nothing but thin air. That's called a Ponzi scheme. You keep it up, for a while by taking previous loans to pay back the current loans, but eventually that bubble will pop. And I think that's what
every bubble pops. Yeah.
No,
exactly.
I'm not okay. Before we go, it's been a good show, and folks, please be kind to me. This wasn't easy on me either, but I want to go one last thing. You're saying that there's a tremendous real estate bubble in Israel going on because of a tax revolt by Israeli Arabs that the government is not dealing with. Quickly, what are you talking about?
What happens when the government has much more expenses than a tax collection? For example, in Israel, the Arabs are 1/4 of the citizenry, and they pay by far too little taxes. And they don't want to pay, and they live in their own places where they resist violently to pay taxes. Then the government has to come up with the money from somewhere else. So 60% of the property values when you buy an apartment is tax on top of tax on top of tax. Therefore, the government encourages a price increase in real estate, which is by now easily twice as high as the population can sustain in the long run. That's the meaning of a price bubble. And this increased collection of taxes from real estate pays against the costs of infrastructure, for example, and services to socio segments or say sectors which don't pay.
That's why it costs so much to buy an apartment. All right, that's what you're saying. What you're saying is you're subsidizing Arabs to refuse to pay their own taxes, right?
Correct. Okay. They and the ultra-Orthodox, yes.
The ultra-Orthodox are also not paying taxes?
They're also resisting violently to pay much of the taxes, because these are two sectors are organized, very well organized, and they don't hesitate to take organized violence. Mostly the Arabs, but also the ultra-Orthodox, if they want to close a neighborhood or if they want to hide their dealings, and they don't let you mess or dig too deeply into their things, yeah. And this is what happens. The government has not got the power, effectively it hasn't got the power that it should have had to investigate and collect in those sectors like in other sectors. So when you and me live in that country, we are under...
Oh, Yoav, I'm sorry. Those bleeps mean the end, but actually... we got it done, my goodness. That was a good interview. I enjoyed that. And whether you made sense of it or not, people, it's going to be up for a week at libertyarchives.com. Our next guest is David Kahn, and he's actually more mainstream than Yoav. Stay tuned, folks. In 7 minutes, I'm back. Thank you, Yoav.
Thank you.
The program you are listening to is 100% sponsored by you, the listener, on this First Amendment Rights Media channel. you will notice that there are few commercials on this radio network. There's a good reason for that. Corporate advertising dollars come with strings that limit program content. So without your help, these programs cannot continue on internet or our several affiliates. If you benefit by the educational law programs, we ask you to give. If you are admonished or nurtured by the Bible and ministry programs, we ask you to give. If some voice a cause that you are passionate about, we ask you to give. If you believe in any of these, we ask you to support them as you would a missionary on a continual basis, as if giving a tithe for missionary radio. These programs are not commercially viable and must be supported by those faithful to the cause of truth. Look for the button to sponsor your favorite programs at our listen and schedule pages on the internet. Then, when you subscribe, we will send you the last quarterly MP3 CD of that program immediately, and continue to do so with each new quarter. We will also give you unlimited archive access to all of our programs. We're asking you to give much less than a tithe, so that you may also send support directly to a particular program host, cause, and anywhere else the Spirit may lead you. Do all to the glory of our God and Creator, for His holy nation, the only kingdom that will last forever. Thank you for listening.
Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. That's crosstheborder.org.
I know you all want answers, and believe me, so do I, and I'll do my best to get them.
Despite Nicolas Cage's promise to do his best to get left behind rapture answers for us, don't hold your breath. Not everyone believes Left Behind is true prophecy. Some may even regard as conspiratorial the mainstream re-release of the Left Behind movie, with actor Nicolas Cage portraying the main character, as an attempt to further reinforce in the minds of all this perception of false prophecy, in order to condition the masses for the play about to begin. If you want true Bible prophecy answers, get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. The author exposes the Latin rapture origin, the 7-year tribulation deception, true Bible revelation of Daniel's 70 weeks, the abomination of desolation, the restrainer, America in the Revelation, the image of the beast and the mark of the beast, and the truth about God's chosen people, and so much more about Bible prophecy. This book will shatter the Left Behind paradigm of future events. Get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. That's crosstheborder.org.